Now is Congressman Adam Schiff, who led the House managers at the impeachment trial. He's chair of the Intelligence Committee. Sir, thank you so much for taking time tonight. I imagine what you mostly want to do is take a nap and do some do something
Very
restorative. It has been a marathon for you and your fellow House managers. I think particularly for you, as you've shouldered so much of the live on your feet argument in the trial. I imagine that you're not too close to it to have some top-line thoughts, some big-picture thoughts on what you've just been through and how well you did.
Well, Rachel, I think all of us, as part of the House managers and the phenomenal staff who worked on this, feel we made the most powerful case, the best case we could possibly make. We felt we had certainly all the facts on our side, and it was gratifying to see so many senators, indeed Republican senators, acknowledge that we had proved the case. And we hoped, although at times it looked like there was little reason for hope, that our arguments may resonate, even if with a single member. And indeed, they did. And I have to say, I leave this process now optimistic, because I think that what Mitt Romney did, what a number of very courageous Democratic senators did, really justified the faith the founders put in their system of self-governance, that people would have sufficient virtue to stand up for what was right. And I just, could not be more moved by what I heard Mitt Romney say. I leave this process, notwithstanding the lack of a fair trial, notwithstanding the fact that he was acquitted when the senators knew he was guilty, still with the optimism that we will get through this and that the Constitution was brilliantly written and it will see us through.
You and your fellow House managers had an op-ed in the Washington Post today that has a darker tone, and I want to ask you about some of it because I feel like you are trying to direct us toward, if not an action item for the country, at least something that is sort of the next order of business. I'm just going to quote to you from your own op-ed today. The president's defenders resorted to a radical theory that would validate his worst, most authoritarian instincts. They argued that a president cannot abuse his power, no matter how corrupt his conduct, if he believes it will benefit his reelection. If left in office, the president will not stop trying to cheat in the next election until he succeeds. We must make sure he does not. Because of the impeachment process, voters can now stand forewarned of the lengths to which the president will go to try to secure his reelection, violating the law and undermining our national security and that of our allies. That is a clarion warning about what's going to happen over the next 10 months as we head toward the November election. What are you looking for from the American people by issuing that kind of warning?
Well, it was, I have to say, stirring once again to hear it, not in my words, but in Mitt Romney's words when he talked about how this was such an egregious abuse of the public trust to withhold hundreds of millions of dollars from an ally that has Russian soldiers on its soil. If he'll go to those lengths to secure illicit help to cheat in the next election, you really can't put it past him to do anything to cheat in the next election or commit any other kind of egregious misconduct which undermines our national security. So, we in Congress are going to have to remain vigilant, and I think the American people are going to have to remain vigilant and not become inured to all the falsehoods and all the deceptions, all the gaslighting that this administration seems to try to do on a daily basis. It's going to require us all, I think, to be inspired by Mitt Romney's courage and speak truth to power.
Mr. Chairman, if you wouldn't mind sticking with us for just a second, one of your fellow House managers, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee today, told reporters that he may be subpoenaing John Bolton soon. I need to ask you about that and one other matter, if you could stick with us.
Sure.
Chairman Adam Schiff, who led the team of House managers during the impeachment inquiry, is our guest. We'll be right back. Joining us once again is Congressman Adam Schiff, who led the House managers in the impeachment trial. He's chair of the House Intelligence Committee. Mr. Chairman, thank you for staying with us. I really appreciate it.
You bet.
One of your fellow impeachment managers, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Jerry Nadler, told reporters today that it is likely he is going to issue a subpoena for John Bolton, former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who rocked the impeachment proceedings sort of externally by his statements that he had information directly relevant to the president's conduct in this inquiry, and later reporting that in the manuscript of his forthcoming book, he described the president talking to him directly about wanting to link aid to Ukraine to these investigations. Is it your understanding that Mr. Bolton will be subpoenaed by either the Judiciary Committee or by your committee in the House? Can you tell us anything about that?
Rich, I can tell you that there's been absolutely no decision made about whether to subpoena John Bolton or not subpoena John Bolton. What we had decided in discussing this with the Speaker is we were going to try the case, we would conclude the trial, and we would consider what next steps we should take afterwards. So at this point, no decisions have been made about that. I can tell you that after the Senate voted not to hear witnesses, after they voted to be the first impeachment trial in history without witnesses, we did approach John Bolton's counsel, asked if Mr. Bolton would be willing to submit an affidavit under oath describing what he observed in terms of the president's Ukraine misconduct, and he refused. So for whatever reason, he apparently was willing to testify before the Senate, but apart from that, seems intent on saving it for his book. He'll have to answer for that. But at this point, we have not made a decision about whether or not to move forward with a subpoena, but it's certainly something that we will be discussing.
You also raised flags in a couple of public interviews and during the trial. It struck me as dramatic terms that there are elements of the intelligence community, national security, the NSA specifically, that have been withholding information about Ukraine. You implied or suggested that it was on orders from the White House and that it was an improper withholding of information from the intelligence committees. You should be entitled to that information, but the intelligence community was withholding it from you improperly. Is that still the case? And are the intelligence committees, both your committee in the House and the one in the Senate, likely to pry that information loose?
It is still regrettably the case, and it's a deep concern to me. There are really a couple categories of intelligence that are at issue. One is a category that was shared with some of us, but it was not shared in a form that we could make it available to all the senators. And it was information that was pertinent to the case that they should have had to make their determination. That was one problem. The other problem is that there were other bodies of intelligence that we had requested that had been collected that were certainly pertinent to our request, but we couldn't tell how pertinent they may be to the trial. And at some point, there were instructions or dictates or requests from up above. And as a result, what was supposed to be turned over to us was withheld from us. That is particularly an issue with the NSA, but maybe an issue with the CIA as well. And here you have I think, the flaw that exists in the character of the president, which has already infected the Justice Department so grievously, and other agencies as well, now seeming to infect part of the intelligence community. And for those of us that rely on that intelligence community to speak truth to power, to speak plainly to us, not to withhold from us, it is of grave concern.
Briefly, Mr. Chairman, do you have support from the Senate Intelligence Committee, from its Republican leadership, on pursuing this?
I don't know the answer. I haven't talked to Chairman Burr about it. I know that Mark Warner shares the concerns that I have, at least as it pertains to the information that both I think he and I thought should properly be shared with the rest of the Senate, but I can't speak for Senator Burr.
Chairman Adam Schiff led the House managers in the impeachment inquiry and has deserved a little bit of R&R at this point, sir. Thank you for everything that you have done in addition to your day job over these last weeks and months. Thank you for helping us understand it along the way. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.